Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us on this paranormal pit stop. Tonight, we'll be exploring a former lockup turned museum that's located off Castle Street in Aberdeen, Scotland, that boasts the mantles of being both one of the oldest buildings in the city, as well as being one of the most well-preserved 17th century jails in the country, and that, according to legend, is stalked by the restless spirits of those once held within. Are you ready to brave the ghosts of the Tolbooth? Historically, permission to build an early version of the Tolbooth was granted in 1393 and was purposed to serve as a government building as well as to hold prisoners awaiting trial. Through the mid-1500s, the city would construct its first guillotine, and in 1563, the Queen's Act against witchcraft would result in the execution of murderers and witches, while minor criminals were usually submitted to public humiliation. Construction of the Tolbooth we know today took place between 1616 and 1629, with the structure intended for use as a council chamber, court, and jail. And just a year later, in 1630, when Marion Hardy would be imprisoned on site for witchcraft, and was strangled and burned in public for her crimes. Following, over 60 individuals faced similar fates, many covered in tar or burned at the stake, until 1703 when witchcraft was no longer deemed a criminal offense. In 1745, the Duke of Cumberland would halt a Jacobite uprising and would station his men at the Tolbooth steeple to keep an eye out for rebels. In 1746, the lockup would hold over 50 Jacobite prisoners from the Battle of Culloden, the last Jacobite battle, and through the bulk of the mid to late 1700s, local children of the streets, considered to have bleak futures, were held within the old structure until transport to America could be arranged, after which they'd work as slaves. Disturbingly, it's rumored that during this time, some children were actually stolen from their parents for this purpose, never to be seen by their families again. From 1867 to 1874, the Tolbooth would undergo a full reconstruction alongside an expansion, a process that would combine several previously separated structures into one complex. And in 1891, executions at Aberdeen were halted, apart from one Henry John Burnett in 1963, who was put down following a brutal murder. The Tolbooth was officially closed in 1991, with a museum opening in its wake in 1995. The site remains open to the public, offering educational information on Aberdeen, as well as on various executions of murderers and witches. A collection which includes an authentic 17th century guillotine blade, a scold's bridle which was purposed to silence nagging wives, and displays on various methods of torture implemented through the medieval era. Not surprisingly, centuries of legends have pinned the Tolbooth as haunted by the souls of the many who've perished or who were executed within, with both staff and visitors of the museum reporting frequent inexplicable occurrences, including disembodied voices and singing, the sound of jingling keys that seemingly emanates from thin air, footsteps from empty rooms, the clatter of chains in motion, and encounters with shadowy figures, as well as with the full-bodied apparitions of guards usually sighted walking their old routes. The ghost of one Janet Walker, who was known as the Fitty Witch, and who was killed through the 17th century by way of strangulation and immolation, has been sighted roaming about, and the specter of a man standing at all of 4 feet in height and clad in 1920s attire has been encountered. Some theorize this latter spirit wasn't actually short in life, but only appears that way because the floor of the building has since been raised, while his spirit is stuck on the original level. Within Cell 2, several have reported an uneasy feeling, accompanied by strange smells, and during separate paranormal investigations, one medium felt phantom labor pains that she claimed stemmed from a woman who died of childbirth somewhere on site, while another described sensing the presences of a man and young boy. Reported across the whole of the site are orbs both captured in video and visible to the naked eye, a floating orange light not dissimilar to an old lantern, white mists captured in photography, doors that open and close on their own, and objects sighted moving by themselves or even floating in midair. A handful of reports detail the constant feeling of being watched, followed, or even touched by some icy, invisible thing, while others of the sensation of being strangled, or of intense pains many suspect are related to those lost to torturous punishments. Lastly, several cells hold waxwork figures that some claim act as conduits to the many souls scattered about. These figures have been discovered by staff completely rearranged and under impossible timeframes, and countless stories tell of their eerie lifeless heads turning to follow passers-by. Thanks for tuning in for this paranormal pit stop. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Good night.